My dad was in that field, and I went into estate planning with him. I couldn't have gotten to that level on my own because I really leaned on his knowledge and experience. But very shortly after that, I identified a way to make millions and millions of dollars. And it was during a period on Wall Street called the go-go era. And it was back in the late 1960s. And it was a time when the market was hotter than it's ever been since, even with the dot-com bubble couldn't hold a candle to the late 1960s when the marketplace was so hot that you could literally have an idea on paper. You could take that idea to a boutique investment banker, and if they liked your idea, they'd take you public just on your idea. And as long as that was intriguing enough, they were raising money left and right, and they were making millionaires out of people who had only an idea on paper. So that gives you an idea what that era was like. Well, there was a problem. The problem was that if you're an investment banker firm, then you have what's called a net capital requirement. You have to maintain a certain amount of capital in your firm in order to stay in business. If you don't have the necessary capital, the regulators put you out of business. In order to take companies public, you had to make a market in their stock afterwards. In other words, you had to be prepared to stabilize the market by buying and selling the shares of the company you just took public so that sales would offset buys and the companies wouldn't spike in the price. Okay, so there's a process. Well, in order to do that, you had to maintain a certain net capital, which means you had an inventory of the stock of all these companies you were taking public. And if anything happened to that company that it tanked for any reason, then this asset value that you had in their stock could disappear overnight. So what these investment bankers didn't realize at the time that they were taking all these companies public is how exposed they were to the simple death of that owner. I mean, if that entrepreneur died or became incapacitated in any way, the stock would go into the tank. Their asset value would shrink. They would no longer meet their net capital requirements and they'd go out of business. Well, when I pointed that out to them, they were horrified. And so they were looking for, how do we solve this? And I showed them how life insurance could be used to solve that. And I had investment bankers throughout Wall Street at that time, bringing me into all these companies that they were taking public so I could write big life insurance policies on the lives of these owners, protecting their net capital investment in these companies and eliminating the possibility that they would go out of business. And I made so much money at that time. It was astronomical. It was just astronomical. But it was like having an idea. It was having, seeing a hole in a marketplace, seeing something that was unprotected, seeing something that was needed, and then constructing a method to solve the problem. That's really what entrepreneurism is all about. It's finding needs and fill it. It's seeing things that don't exist, that need to exist, that you can make happen. And then grabbing that bull by the horn, so to speak, or wrestling it to the ground, and then making that thing happen. And that's the fun of being an entrepreneur. So that's how I started. Then I took my first company public in that hot marketplace with an idea, not much more on paper. And I took my first company public in 1969. And I used the shares of that company, the equity value that was now built up as a result of that marketplace. In other words, the shares had value, right? Because they were being traded. And then I used that stock to acquire financial type companies. And I built up a financial services firm during that acquired companies that were life insurance companies, general insurance companies, investment companies, leasing companies, anything to do with finance. And then we cross-marketed the client bases of those companies to create even more revenue for the companies that I bought than they had at that time. And at that time, we were actually a pioneer in the what's called the integrated financial services business. Prior to 1969, if you wanted any financial service, you wanted life insurance, you wanted mutual funds, you wanted real estate, you wanted any place to invest your money, you had to see a person who sold that. And there was just salesmen, and they had no professional background, not even a lot of training sometimes. And you had all these people pushing their financial products on you. And no one was interested in the benefit of the client. They just wanted to sell their product. So if you had financial needs, the life insurance guy was trying to convince you needed life insurance. The mutual fund guy was trying to convince you to put your money in mutual funds. The real estate guy was telling you to put your money in real estate, and all they wanted to do was sell something. Well, we took the reverse approach. Okay, this is find the need and fill it. And we decided that the whole industry was, instead of being client oriented, was producer oriented, was product oriented. Well, what if we could flip the industry and really do a great job for the client? And we came up with this idea of doing financial planning. Instead of pushing a product on a client, we educated the client as to what their needs and resources were all about, and then let them pull from us the solution. The client was better served. They were getting products and services that could really get the job done for them. And we had 3 products to sell, so we were making a whole lot more money than the rest of the guys. So it's done in a way where it's win-win. The objective of good entrepreneurism is you win as an entrepreneur, the client wins, your vendors win, the people who supply you, your investors win. In other words, if it's done right, there are no losers, everybody wins. And that's the nature of that. In the 70s, I got involved in the leverage buyout boom, where we developed ways of having an ability to buy companies where we didn't have to come up with any capital or cash. In other words, imagine this. You're going to buy a multi-million-dollar company. You don't come up with a dime. Well, you can do it. And the reason you can do it is because inside this company you want to buy, there's assets, right? Machinery and equipment, accounts receivable, inventory. And the other thing the company has is cash flow. In other words, they have sales that they're making and money's coming in. So you have cash flow and you have assets. And there's a way to use the assets and the cash flow of the company that you want to buy to create the cash to make the purchase. And then the company's income pays for it all. So in the 1970s, I bought millions of dollars of businesses in multiple different industries during that period of time. But in the 80s, a weird thing happened. And that was that the prime rate of interest went from 3 or 4%, like it is now, up to 21%. Because of this thing then called inflation. All right. Now, when the interest rate went to 21%, you couldn't afford to borrow money to buy a business. By the time you paid off the debt or started paying on the debt, all the money got sucked out of the company. What I did was I started teaching other people how I bought businesses, so that those people who wanted to use it as a tool to get into business, or those people who wanted to use it as a tool to expand a business by acquiring their competitors or acquiring other companies, we taught that program in literally all the English-speaking countries on the planet. So we did it in London, we did it in Calgary, we did it in Toronto, we did it in Los Angeles and New York. I mean, name a major city. And we were having events there throughout the 1980s. And into the 1990s. And then this wonderful thing came along called the internet. And any smart entrepreneur was looking at anything that was going on at that time and saying, how do I move this from bricks and mortar, from physically moving stuff from place to place, to delivering it all on the internet, to moving electrons instead of material, because it's a whole lot cheaper to communicate through an electronic medium than it is to pack up a bunch of stuff, haul it off to a city, give an event, and then distribute stuff physically in that place. Okay. It's just a whole lot easier if you can reach people over the internet, deliver the information that they need right over the internet in video and audio, and not have to physically move assets. So being an entrepreneur, thing you want to do is look at, how do I optimize what I'm doing in a way that can be done much more efficiently? So we took all the things we were doing in terms of educating and training people, and we moved it to the internet. So that's a little bit of my background. Okay. I bought over 3,500 companies during my lifetime. I've trained over 350,000 people how to do these types of acquisitions. I have 30,000 plus people who have attended my most advanced courses. I work hand in glove with them even to this day to help them acquire companies in a very hands-on way. And life has been an incredible journey and an incredible venture for me. But the best part of it is I get to meet guys like Arthur and you. And Arthur has been a great partner with me in a number of different ventures that I've gone into. He's introduced me to some fabulous people who we've gone on to do some great things with. And that's part of the best part of life for me is part of it's the what you do. The other part of it's the who you do it with. And for me, the relationships that I've built up all along this process have just been phenomenal. And I got to tell you, I wouldn't trade my life for anybody's.